Welcome to the Nonprofit Report, your update on nonprofit organizations, issues, and leaders, viewable on YouTube and M. Oppenheim TV. I'm excited as your host to introduce the unique and, dare I say, iconic Icon Museum and Study Center in Clinton, Massachusetts, through its leadership, Simon Morsink, Executive Director, and Jack McCabe, Board President. So welcome to you both. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
So, Jack, you and I go back to when you were actually doing the search for this, and you came to us and you said, we have this museum. The Russians have are just attacking Ukraine. It's called the Russian Museum and Study Center. You needed a new leader. You wanted to actually create a footprint for this art form. There were so many imponderables about this search, and it was the thing that really excited me. So talk a little bit about the organization's conception and how it developed before Simon came on.
Well, the museum grew from a collection that a guy by the name of Gordon Langton created over a long period of time on his travels to Moscow in Russia. I went with him on many of those trips, and he first started out of a small flea market in Izmailova, which is right in Moscow. And as time went on over the years, the scale and the scope of his collection grew significantly. All of this art was in his house, and one day his wife says, it's about time we put these in some kind of a professional building. So he acquired this building right across the street from where his business was, actually. We had an innovation center in there, and he modified it to adapt to what he wanted to show in terms of his art. At that time, he had an executive director, Kent Russell, who he had hired from a different unique museum called the Museum of Arms and Armor in Worcester. And Kent effectively had a career of museum management in Ireland and other places in the United States, even regionally in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. And he learned all about the sacred art of the icon. For several years, from 2006 through 2013, he was involved in all of that and really presented the museum to the community regionally and to a lesser degree internationally. And then one day he decided that it was time for him to retire. And he got the month right with me. He never got the year right. That dragged out a ways. And so we launched a search for firms that could help us do that replacement search. And we selected your firm, Oppenheim, to do that.
It was a terrific experience, and Kent was fabulous. He's now the board chair over at the Worcester Art Museum.
Correct.
And so in his retirement, he's not all that retired, right?
Correct. And one of the things, and this is always something that can be difficult, I felt strongly once Simon was selected that I needed someone that could integrate Simon in a way that I couldn't in the Worcester community and so forth, because I was looking at retirement myself and so forth and was busy traveling the globe up until that point. And so we kept him on the board, and he still is a board member. And his role was to introduce Simon to many of the foundations, grant authoring foundations, other museums regionally, and help Simon find a home in Concord, Mass. And he stays very active. And then he got me involved in the Worcester Art Museum too, and I'm treasurer there working with him. So it all kind of fit together in a kind of a jigsaw puzzle of sorts.
And his museum also merged into the Worcester Art Museum.
That's correct. That's correct.
It's really the cultivation of an ecosystem, and I think that's really got to be an interesting experience, Simon, to come from Amsterdam, where you led a family business. Talk a little bit about your knowledge and how that came about, and your family's association with the art of the icon, because that's a fascinating story in and of itself.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Yes, I grew up with icons. So icons is kind of such an important part of my life. When I was a kid, small kid, we discussed icons at the kitchen table. My father was an art dealer, a specialist in Greek and Russian icons. And yeah, what he did when he had acquired a few new pieces, he brought him home, and we were just sitting there, my brother and my sister and me. My sister was not that interested. She just like, oh, that's a bit boring. But I was fascinated by this art form from a very early age on. And so we discussed the icons. We looked at the different paint layers, the backside, the structure of the craquelure, the saints that were depicted, the inscriptions. It was to me, it was a little bit like detective work, and so I enjoyed it a lot. And then I decided to study art history in Leiden, in the Netherlands, and I studied in Belgium, in Louvain, and later on in Moscow. And well, I think I was 25 or 26 when I opened my own gallery. So as a second generation art dealer in Amsterdam, as a specialist, a junior specialist in Russian and Greek icons. And I worked with my brother Hugo, and we were, well, I probably can say that we were pretty successful in what we did. And we participated in art fairs in all over the world, and sold to museums and private collectors. And one of these collectors, these private collectors, happened to be Gordon Langton, the founder of the back then Museum of Russian Icons. And I remember that I met Gordon in London at one of the sales, the Sotheby's sales. Sotheby's organized back then two specialized Russian sales a year, and Gordon loved it to walk around and go to the viewing days and also buy icons, acquire icons in London at these sales. And that's where we met. And I found him a very interesting, friendly man. And he became a client of mine. So that's that's how it all started. That's how we got connected.
So one of the things that I think is so interesting is that when your father was collecting icons at that time, it was an art that it was an art form that was really neglected. And very often the artists were not known of these icons. They were just they were styles, but unattributed. And this art would have ended up dissolving into nothing. It would have been discarded had it not found a home. And that's sort of what your dad did and what you and your brother did, creating a market. Connecting to Gordon was just a happenstance. There were hundreds and hundreds of other people that you connected with. Do you find the work running a museum now substantially different than the kind of interactions that you had previously as a gallery? Because you're no longer selling icons, right?
Yeah, I'm selling the museum now, and in a way, and yes, it is very different, and not so different at the same time. What is very different is that as an art dealer, you have a select group of people that you work with, mostly wealthy people, collectors.
With the financial means to purchase the products that you
exactly.
are.
Exactly. That's these people are very interesting people. It has been a great pleasure for me to work with a few really fascinating individuals over the past decades. And what I'm doing here at the museum is different in the sense that I'm sharing now my passion and my love for icons with with much broader audiences. So with a much, much broader group of people. And it's kind of, it feels sort of logical to me and natural that this is a moment in my life that I'm ready for that. So it's a next step. Icons are passion of mine. So it's for me, leading this museum is a great way of sharing my passion with a much, much broader group of people.
And Jack, when you look at how the museum is developed, one of the things that you pointed out is that under Kent's leadership, you were basically establishing your brand, you were establishing your identity, you were setting up the facility and so on, and it was mostly catering to a local audience. How do you see the audiences having developed for this museum as Simon has taken on the reins as Kent's successor, and then benefited from Kent's work in introducing him around and so on?
Yeah, that's a good question because Clinton is a small community. And it's important for us to have a very active role in that community. And so we have board members who are president of a local bank, a lawyer, etc. But the audience for this art is not only in the United States, but it's internationally. And we've, over the last few years, as you know, the type of candidates that we were looking at were curators, museum managers. Typically, we weren't really looking for an art dealer, okay? But it turns out the more we thought about it, the international side of the world and the appreciation for this sacred art form is an international audience in large part. The players are international. And Simon brought that connection. In fact, we have on our 15-member board now, we have a board member from Australia who's a collector. We have a board member from London who's a collector. We have an iconographer from Virginia that is well known. We have a professor at Chapman University in San Diego who is an art icon person, okay? So we had to transform this passion that the founder had into the executive director. And the first thing that Simon said on this webcast is he had the passion. And that was the key to success. I have a love, but not a passion. But my job was to create an organization, a board, a governance scheme, work with the executive director on expanding the touch points of this art around the globe. And so that is still a work in progress, but it's significantly changed over the last 3 years since Simon's been on board and leading it.
One of the things that I find really fascinating is that we didn't know you, Simon. I mean, was not one of the names that had surfaced, right? We basically did our work. We followed the threads. I had promised Jack and Kent that I would look at different profiles, and one of the profiles was internationally renowned, expert. And then we went through the museum field, we went through the academia, and we went through the gallerists. And you came up, and when you mentioned that you had already had a relationship previously with the founder, it was just, oh, that's interesting. And then we brought it to Jack and Kent, and then what transpired. One of the things that I think is very interesting, Jack, is when you mentioned how you saw your role, an interest, not necessarily a passion. But the thing that I think is really important to state is that you and Kent and others on the board created an organization by exercising your business skills, in part common sense, a part analysis of cash flow and revenue and sustainability, in part of how do you create a relationship with the addressable audience. And there was a segmentation of that audience to include collectors, but also non-collectors. people in Clinton, but also outside of people in Clinton. Talk a little bit about, and then Simon, jump in. Talk about how that has evolved, Simon, as you've taken up the reins. First, from Jack's thinking of sort of an analysis, and you've told me a few stories about who your constituents are and what relationships you've cultivated in the last 3 years. So, Jack, if you could kick us off and then Simon jump in, that would be great.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that although I didn't have a passion so much for the art form, I had a passion for the man because I worked for him for 30 years and I traveled the world with him. And my job is he would go to Singapore, he would go to China, he would go to Mexico and create these joint ventures and create a 2-page letter of how we're going to run business. And then he would send me in to set up an organization that would function. And so this was sort of a continuation in a different world for me. And so we established a board of directors formally. He did not believe in a board. He was an entrepreneur. He had to have one because he had to have one. But if he had his druthers, he wouldn't have one. And so we created a board of directors. The other interesting thing was we created a formal review process for the executive director's performance. And Simon said he never had a review in his life in his own private way, And so we formalized that. But what we took, the way we developed that was when your firm and our firm developed the spec for the job, we created some overarching elements to it in terms of leadership, governance, collections, all those kind of touch points. And that has found its way into the review. And it's found its way into our mission, and it's found its way into our value system.
It's very intentional, right? That was the collaboration, right?
Exactly. And Simon, and we've tweaked the mission a little bit. The name Russian is no longer in there, not because of the conflict so much as we have Greek icons in there now. So we're diversifying. And we waited until we had a significant numbers to say that we're differentiating and not just one icon. And we just opened our Greek gallery last week to a large audience. And so now we have, two very different genesises of icons in the museum. And that has been a big push for the local area because we happen in Boston and the Worcester area, a large Greek population. So that there's a certain business element, marketing element, strategy to why we're doing that. Never losing sight of the fact that the museum's foundation still is on the art from Russia. So we've professionalized our approach. We've brought people in with skill sets that complement the art itself, the history itself, the religion itself, all of those elements in a very thoughtful way. And the board is a terrific board. My term ends come January. I've been mentoring someone, Kathy Manick, who will take over January 1. It's a very smooth transition. Simon's got his full work visa now, so we got a long runway here. And we're pleased to have him, and I've been pleased to be a small part of it.
Well, Jack still is great chair of the board, Mark. I'm really happy to have been, to have had the honor, still have the honor to work with Jack, because that was really, and still is really very, very special. But circling back to the moment that I arrived here at the museum, there was a very interesting moment, I think, because with founder museums, it can be a little bit complicated after a founder dies. And Gordon Langton had passed away before I arrived. Russia had invaded, full-scale invasion, Ukraine. And the museum had done a lot already. I mean, Kent, my predecessor, had been a fantastic director for the museum. He's the founding director. He had done a magnificent job. But the museum was at a moment that, well, what will the future look like? And the moment that the founder of a museum like ours is not around anymore, it can be difficult because the founder is kind of the soul of the museum. And we had to really think about it and kind of reinvent ourselves, I think. And that's why we went through a long process. We worked on a new strategic plan, a little bit of soul searching, with including all different stakeholders. That was a very interesting process and very useful too, because we decided all together. We had these questions like what are our true strengths, and who are our audiences, and how do we maximize the value of our museum, of our collections, and all these questions. They're so important for every museum. And we then, in the end, decided to change the name of the museum from the Museum of Russian Icons to the Icon Museum and Study Center, in order to be able to allow us to embrace the whole world of icons and Eastern Christian art. And I think we all together did a really great job by changing the name and working on this new strategic plan, because as Jack already said, last week we opened our new permanent Greek icon gallery. And we are a unique institution. We are the only institution in the United States solely dedicated to the world of icons and Eastern Christian art. So the past 3 years has been, quite a ride, I have to say, but a very interesting one. And the museum looks beautiful. I would really invite everyone who's looking at this webcast to come over to Clinton and see the icons in the museum.
Let's talk a little bit about other aspects of the change here. You've diversified your collection. You've opened a new gallery. Your program's research library and your lectures and conferences are quite interesting. Talk a little bit about what you're offering there, Simon.
So we have now, with the new name, under the new name of our institution, there's the museum and the study center. And the museum is the building with the icons where you can go and experience the beauty and the spirituality of icons. And that is very important, I think, because in the end, nothing really compares to the encounter with the original work of art, with the original icon. So everybody's welcome here at our museum in Clinton. That's the physical part of our institution. Then the second branch is the study center. And the study center is as important to us as the physical museum. What we do, we organize lectures, we organize, next year, we'll organize a big international symposium with speakers from all over the world for our special symposium, because next year will be the year of our 20th anniversary. And actually, next week already, we'll publish the 4th issue of the Journal of Icon Studies. So that's an online publication, open, how do you say that, source, so you can, it's accessible.
It's free knowledge. It's free knowledge. In other words, you're not creating restrictions.
Yes. So that is, I think, that is part of our thinking as well, that we want to be, very accessible, and so that everybody can share and come over to the museum. And we want to share our research as well. So study center is very important too. We are working on that very hard at the moment. So the two branches, the physical museum and the center for the studies of icons. And in this way, we are really a roundabout for the knowledge of icons, for people from everywhere.
So part of this is it ties back into the business interests in the region, right? If you have corporations that are investing in the United States for whatever reasons that there are, they want to make sure that the cultural landscape is rich for their employees. They want to see that there are signifiers that people out of different cultures with different beliefs might be welcome in the area. How do you ensure that that interaction is taking place and those messages, which are not necessarily art messages, it's a people-to-people message, that those messages are actually shared, particularly in today's fraught world where the world looks like it's becoming much more divided and much more polarized. What you're trying to do is to basically bridge that polarization. How do you deal with that, Simon? And then Jack, if you could jump in as well, because that's been your career, right?
Well, I think we are so lucky, all of us, that we live in Massachusetts, which is an absolutely amazing state with so many different people from all over the world, with cultures, religions from all over the world, living peacefully together. Our museum is, well, of course, we are a museum specialized in Christian art, and we are focusing on this world of Eastern Christian art. What we are actively working on is including all the communities from these different worlds. That is the Greek Orthodox community. Jeff already told about the communities in Worcester. There are big Greek Orthodox communities in Boston as well, Russian Orthodox communities. But there are also Serbians, people from Albania, even Ethiopia, Northern Africa. These are all Orthodox. Well, Orthodox Christianity still is or used to be very big in these countries. And what we see is that these people find their way to our museum. So we are a place where people from all these different backgrounds come together and enjoy the icons. And icons well, the world of icons is almost 2,000 years old. It spans a very long period of time. And they have an important message, I think, to tell us. And it's really an art form that you can, well, reflect on. Contemplation is important. You can do that all here at the museum. So I think we're playing a really important role in that respect.
Jack, do you want to comment at all on the cross-cultural aspects?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go back to 1984, the first day I went to work for Gordon at his company, Nipro. And I was sitting in his office. He's on his phone. He's signaling me that he's going to get off the phone in a minute. And I looked on one of his walls, and it had a statement. And it says, at Nipro, we value every customer and the worth of every individual. And that word worth really stuck with me. It's a soulful word. It's not the value of every employee, the contribution of every employee, the work ethic. It's the worth, the fundamental worth. And Gordon was a guy that didn't believe in organization charts. He had to have vice presidents. He had to have forklift truck drivers. He had to have packers at machines. He had to have quality control people. But he didn't have an organization chart. He just had this fundamental dedication in his personal life of worth for the individuals. And when we built factories around the globe, wherever they were, he wanted that society there to function the way it wanted to function with its cultural norms, that are different around the globe, based on that fundamental human existence of the worth of the individual. And in a small way, we try to carry that into the museum. People aren't hidden in offices. Everybody has an open way about them. We welcome the community. We care about the facility, and so forth. And I think we have to work at it every day. Don't get me wrong, but I think he'd be proud of what it is. And that's kind of what my contribution has been more than anything.
Yeah, it seems like his attitude, and I never knew him other than through this museum. Mm-hmm. But it seems that this is a person who saw all of these different distinctions as a superpower, bringing people together and having people collaborate from different perspectives makes the product better, makes the service better, makes us better.
Yeah, and he he lived it, and that is so key to it. You know, he lived in a modest house. He drove drove a modest car. I mean, he'd sit and coach. You know, he had this way about him that was not self-sacrificing, but just a way of recognizing that everybody goes about their life in the way they want to go about it. And he felt that those fundamentals that brought people together, he practiced on every day that I was involved with him.
It strikes me, Simon, with this collection that you have, because it is so unique and because there are so few American museums in particular with particularly strong collections in this respect, that there are real opportunities to do joint exhibitions with, for example, Islamic art curators or other religious or non-religious art from different traditions. Or do you have any plans in that respect?
No, we do not. Yes, what we are currently working on is we are really concentrating on this world, on the world of icons. And we will have a big exhibition next year with celebrating our 20th anniversary with icons from the Icona Museum in Recklinghausen in Germany, which is our sister museum in Western Europe. They have an absolutely stunning collection of icons. And this will be the first time that icons from this museum will travel to the United States. So I'm really looking forward to that exhibition. That will be a fantastic show. And on top of that, we are also working on an exhibition for 2028. That's the way it works in the museum world. It's planning ahead a long time. And with icons from American collections. There are so many icons here in the United States that have been hidden in dark storage rooms for decades. And there are real treasures among them. And what we wanted to do is bring these treasures together here at our museum. We have been talking to several all over the United States, in Texas and California, here in Massachusetts, to a little bit further up north. These the smaller institutions, university museums, they have really great pieces in their storage rooms as well. So that's how we see one of our tasks really is our goals to bring these icons out of these storage rooms and show them to the American people, to the audiences, because it's a total shame that they have been hidden for so long, and it's about time. So I'm a huge fan of Islamic art, to come back to that world. This is absolutely fantastic art. But there are other museums who do a much better job than we could do organizing exhibitions.
Well, I love the answer. The answer is really the answer of somebody who is still making a market for an art form in the United States. It really does depend on the stage, right? What you're saying right now is we need to raise awareness. We need to place ourselves in the center of this international art form that here in the United States is underexposed, and we need to concentrate on exposing that art and in gathering people internationally to create that recognition in Clinton of the Icon Museum and Study Center, and also nationally in the United States, so that if you have icons that are sitting in storage that are not being experienced, you understand that by collaborating with the Icon Museum and Study Center, that icon can see the light and be experienced, and it can come together contextually with other works. It's a fabulous strategy, and it just basically goes to show that each museum in each stage of its existence needs to pursue particular strategies in order to realize its aspirations. Thank you so much, both of you, for helping us understand the work of the Icon Museum and Study Center. Simon Morsink, Executive Director, Jack McCabe, Board President. Thank you so much. Thank you for your work the work of Kent and your colleagues on the board and in the staff, your funders, your collectors, your constituents. It's just been a great interview. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And it's great to see you again.
Always great, Jack. Simon, terrific to have you on.
Absolutely.